So I've had enough spiritual content that I've talked about suddenly that I've decided to get on a couple more videos just while I'm here. I have this lovely copy of the Bhagavad Gita that is translated by Eknath Ishwaran, who I love his foreword. But I've been going through the book, and I'm gonna go through it again because I read it once fully, trying to like not be anal and take notes all over it. But I have some more like interesting ideas as I like go through this and wanted to talk about. One thing that I had that struck me kind of last night was this idea that I think we talk about dharma and karma, where dharma itself. First, let's talk about yoga, right? Yoga comes from the root word yuj, to yoke or bind together. Oh. Excuse me. Then we have dharma, which I think the underlying sense is from the root dri, to support, hold up, or bear. So it's the support from within, the essence of a thing, it's virtue. And this is where it first connected with me, the idea that they say you would know your duty in your bones, right? Where I think this, from a biological perspective, bone marrow is what we consider as extremely valuable, right? It's like the production of your essence from the inside out, from your bones itself. Now, if we look at the layers of anatomy in between you, right? You have your bones, then you have your tendons and ligaments, then you have your muscles, then you got like your blood vessels, and then we get smaller into the muscles. So that's from bones to muscles. Your bone itself also has, when we think about fascia, which is sort of like this interstitial web that exists all throughout your body, in between your organs, and in between your cellular spaces, your interstitial cellular spaces. It's like this web-like holding, right? And so around even your bones, you have this sheath. I believe it's called at the deepest level, it's your periosteum. So at these different levels, and I use the word web importantly because later we need to introduce obviously the concept of karma, which is that karma is going to be like it's something that's done. It's a deed or action. I think of it as sometimes following like Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So everything has a cause and effect, and we think about karma as like this interconnected web of life. And so to me, I see dharma here as our bones, the things that support from within against compression, against the forces of gravity. Your skeletal structure acts and is compressed on by gravity to help you with an upright posture, to help you fight the resistance of that subtle force. Karma, your web of actions. Each action has an equal and opposite reaction. So it's kind of like two endpoints holding a string. So this is almost like a spring. So we are thinking about the idea of tension here. There's a little bit of give and take on both sides. In this web of action, every single action in one place, like a drop of a pebble in the water, creates ripples and creates an effect somewhere else. And sometimes that effect is instantaneous. It's almost like looking at like quantum coupling. If you see one thing here, the behavior is going to be the same at irrespective of distance. So, to me, I see this as the dharma, the support from within, against the subtle force of gravity and compression, is your bones. And then the karma, the web of action that is the way you navigate your life, is your muscles and your fascia and your tension, which is meant to be in this natural muscle tone length where the tension is fighting the compression to create an even posture. So your ability to support yourself from within against the subtle force of gravity from the compressed bones, so it's fighting that compression, and then the tension that's coming apart without losing your center, right? You need to be able to have an engaged core at your center to reach out to the extremities and take concrete, safe action and express that tension. Because if you think of like even here, the muscles up here, if I like pull them around, the tension snakes down into my forearms and might snake down into other areas of my body. So in this case, I look at the actions that you take, right? The karma that you're looking at throughout your life. As you take more and more of those actions, here's where I'm going to pull from Wusha a little bit. There's this idea that we have pranayama, right? So I'm talking about them, and that, the prana, it's prana and ayama, right? So let me have one other clarification here. I'm not just talking about We're not talking about breath control. That's commonly how it's described with pranayama. It's pranayama, so it's breath expansion. It's about the expansion of your vital life force. If you're doing breath control, you're really just working with the breath. If you're doing breath expansion, like vital life expansion, that's closer to pranayama. So you want to be aligned with that energy that exists between these compressive and tensile forces. Your dharma and your karma, the bones and the muscle. Now, to get them to connect with each other, right? Because we want the idea of doing your dharma, of doing your duty, is to support your own self-identity, your own self-agency. And doing that naturally, inherently dissolves your karma, right? We'll talk about how this connects with, like, hypermobility and mental anxiety later, because I do have some arguments for connections there. But I think right here, if you're able to act in alignment with your bones, your dharma, then the web naturally kind of works together. And this is something that we do a lot in movement, where we try to almost create the sense that your bones are floating in space and that your muscles are pulling or pushing them around. Whereas I think a lot of people generate motion using the joints as like a framework, and then try to move the muscles around how they think it should. Apologies for the intense coughing you heard there. But anyways, now getting into where I thought about wusha and like cultivation. We want to cultivate these good habits, right? So with dharma and karma, if you are able to act in a way and you're practicing certain pranayama, then the prana ideally at its smallest level is having some, say they call it like blood chi, right? I'm thinking of cultivation, so I'm thinking of chi, but also prana. So I'm thinking of that being in your blood now. Now, if it's circulating through your blood, ideally, that's what's delivering nutrients, right? That's what's delivering the nutrients all around your body. So it is getting to, the idea is to almost like channel this energy and associate your intention and your willpower so strongly that it would somehow seep into your blood. And what I mean by that is, the idea is that you've gotten at such a meditative state that you are triggering certain physiological responses, which are now carrying those hormones and substrates throughout your bloodstream. Now, these can either create certain interactions throughout your body, or what I see it as is, as you say, start strengthening. Say you're going to the gym. These are going to start to feed into your muscles. And now think if your muscles get this particular informational energy attached to it, right? Repeatedly, then the muscle becomes saturated with that energy, that notion, or in this case, let's say a movement, right? Like, let's say you're doing like a punching movement. If you repeat that intention with the punch, with the sequencing of everything that's happening on, you create a sort of muscle memory, right? That area remembers the energy associated with what is this action that's being happening. So you have cultivated a muscle memory, you have cultivated a certain energy there that works for a particular function or a particular purpose. Now, if you keep looking at the muscles, if we want to work back down the layers, I mentioned before, we had bones, muscles, we had bones, tendons, ligaments, muscles, blood. Now, if we come back, we have blood, then ideally that's working into your muscles, like, right? It's like refining and strengthening those muscles. Those muscles, as they get closer towards the end points where they're starting to attach to the bone, we start looking at how it's strengthening the tendons themselves, which are more elastic and they hold a lot more stiffness in them. So this is where they get closer towards the property of the bone. So I think of this as you are almost trying to like crystallize that energy in a sense. You are trying to make sure the mechanotransduction internally is operating with certain parameters. So you've gotten now your energy shifted into the tendons. It's a bit firmer. It's there. Then now ideally, and again, this is where I'm pulling this from Musha, where then they go from tendon strengthening to then like bone reforging, where the idea is now you've gotten that message in the blood, in the muscles, in the tendons surrounding the bones. Now that all is supposed to work together and almost hug the bone and squeeze it in such a way, because that's what's happening. You're creating this compressive effect around the bone. That informational state, that muscle memory of sorts, is now imbued into the bone, and your actions have directly informed and helped shape your bones, or in this case, your duty. So when they're in alignment, that resonance process will be happening back and forth from your karma, the actions, the blood and the nutrients trickling down towards the bone, and then your true sense of duty, who you really are, that you might not be able to change. Your bone marrow that is producing the energy that comes back out into its several liquid forms until it comes back towards the blood and we're interacting with the karma.